years. Nobody visited him in prison. Not his lawyer. Not his wife. Not the men who swore they'd die for him. Nobody. Except one person. A maid. And what she was hiding under her floorboards would destroy every single person who betrayed him. His name was Gabby Anthony. And once, not so long ago, this man owned a penthouse that scraped the clouds. Judges, senators, police commissioners, all of them eating from his table. Now, he sat on a mattress thinner than the promises those people made him. The first year was the loudest. Not the noise, though Riverbend Correctional in upstate New York was never quiet. It was the voices in his head. The voices of every man who had sworn loyalty. Every hand that shook his. Every set of eyes that said, "I'm with you, boss." Till the end. It turned out the end came a lot sooner than any of them had promised. His lawyer, Raymond Voss, took $400,000 in fees. Filed 2 motions. Lost both. Then one Tuesday in February, Gabby called the number he knew by heart. It rang 14 times. Disconnected. Year 2 brought the divorce papers. Natalie, his wife of 11 years, had her attorney deliver them through prison mail. No personal word. No explanation. Just ink so clean and deliberate it almost looked like she enjoyed signing it. Gabby signed his half without reading it. What was the point? By year 3, the visits from his former associates had dwindled to 0. They had come in the early months, not out of loyalty, he understood now, but out of curiosity. They wanted to see if the lion still had teeth. When they saw him, slumped, silent, stripped of everything that had made him dangerous, they stopped coming. Word traveled fast in their world. Gabby Anthony is finished. By year 6, the man who once controlled half the supply chain of the eastern seaboard sat on a thin mattress in a 6x9 cell and stared at a wall. The city outside went right on living. Like he had never existed at all. But someone hadn't forgotten him. Not for a single week. It was a Thursday. October. Year 6. Gabby sat down in the visitation block expecting another attorney trying to sell him an appeal he couldn't afford. He crossed his arms. He waited. And then, Chloe walked in. He almost didn't recognize her. She had been 23 when he went to prison. One of 4 staff members at his estate. So quiet, so efficient, he had never once asked her last name. But she sat down, pressed her palm flat against the cold glass like she could push warmth through it, and picked up the phone. "Mr. Anthony, I brought you something. What are you doing here?" His voice came out rough. 6 years of near silence had worn the smoothness right out of him. She didn't flinch. "Because someone should," she said simply. She came back the following Thursday. And the Thursday after that. For 8 months, every week without fail. 2 hours each way. On her day off. She never asked about the empire. Never asked about the charges. She brought books, small items, and the kind of ordinary living world details that a man can go insane without in a place like this. Gabby told himself he didn't look forward to Thursdays. He was lying. By the 8th month, her visits were the only thing that made him feel like he was still, in some small and fragile way, a human being. But Chloe wasn't just visiting out of loyalty. She knew something. Something she had been waiting 7 years to tell him. The day he walked out. The sky over Riverbend on his last morning was the color of an old bruise. A corrections officer handed him a paper bag containing the clothes he had arrived in 7 years ago. A charcoal blazer, dark trousers, a white shirt, yellowed at the collar with the passage of a life. He changed. He looked in the small mirror above the sink. Same face. Broader lines. The beard heavier. Both temples now fully white. He looked like a man who had survived something. He reached into the bag and stopped. There was a folded slip of paper that had not been in the bag when it was sealed. Chloe's handwriting. Small, precise, leaning slightly to the right. 431, Mercer Street, apartment 4B, the Bronx. Come when you're ready. I'll be there. C. No declaration. No explanation. Just an address and a certainty he hadn't earned and didn't understand. He folded the paper and put it in his breast pocket. The massive steel doors ground open, and then he was standing in a gravel parking lot under that bruise-colored sky with the cold November air hitting his face for the first time in 7 years. No car waiting. No familiar face. No one. Just the road stretching south toward the city, gray and indifferent. Gabby stood there for a moment. Then he reached into his pocket, touched the slip of paper once, just once, and started walking. No money. No phone. No allies. Just an address. And a question that needed answering. New York received him the way it received everyone after a long absence. Without acknowledgement. Without ceremony. Without adjusting its rhythm one single beat. He went to Harlem first. The restaurant on 125th Street, the public front for his northern accounts. New name. New sign. New interior. Someone else's money. He stood outside for a moment. Jaw set. Then kept walking. Then he went to Westchester. To his estate. The iron gate. The trimmed hedges. The lights on in the upper windows. And parked in the circular driveway, a black Escalade he recognized immediately. He knew that car. He knew who drove it. Vincent Morrow. His former underboss. The man who had testified against him. The man who handed the DA a recorded conversation, carefully edited, carefully shaped into something that looked like a confession. The man who had smiled at him in the courtroom when the verdict was read. Vincent Morrow was living in his house, sleeping in his rooms, driving his driveway, on the train back south, watching the Hudson turn copper in the dying light. A cold thought surfaced slowly. Vincent wasn't smart enough to build a betrayal that clean on his own. Someone had given him access. Not just to the operations. To Gabby's personal life. His schedule. His private movements. Someone inside the house. Who helped Vincent? Chloe knew. And she had been waiting 7 years to tell him. Apartment 4B. 4th floor. Elevator broken. He climbed the stairs slowly, one hand trailing the paint-chipped railing. He knocked twice. 3 locks. One by one. The door opened. Chloe stood in the doorway in a gray sweater and jeans, her afro loose around her face. "You look thinner," she said. "You drove 2 hours every week for 8 months. I never asked you why." She turned toward the small kitchen. "Come in and sit down. I'll make coffee." The apartment was modest but meticulously maintained. Books organized by color. Plants in the window, all of them alive. A life built carefully with limited resources and kept with intention. He sat at the table. Set his blazer over the chair. Looked at his hands. "My name is Gabby. You can call me Gabby." She set a coffee mug in front of him and sat across the table. She wrapped her hands around her own. For a moment, neither of them said anything. Then she said, "I know who set you up." The words landed like a stone dropped into still water. Gabby went very still. "I've known since the 2nd year. I didn't have a way to reach you safely at first. But then I found it. All of it." "Found what?" She stood up, moved to the bedroom, knelt beside the bed, and slid out a flat black metal box secured with 2 combination locks. Both locks clicked open. The lid rose. Inside, 3 USB drives. Printed documents. 2 burner phones. A thick manila envelope sealed with red tape. The USB drives have the original security footage from the estate. Vincent's men were in the server room for 40 minutes the night before your arrest. They didn't find the secondary backup. I pulled the drives myself before sunrise. You could have been arrested. I could have, she agreed, as if she had simply weighed it and kept moving. He broke the red tape on the manila envelope and opened it. Printed transcripts. Conversation logs between two phones. Going back 14 months before his arrest. His ex-wife's number. Vincent's burner. Planning. Coordinating. Precise and deliberate. She gave him the security schedule. The access codes. The location of the private recordings I kept in the study. And those recordings, Chloe said, have evidence of every deal Vincent made with the DA's office, including properties transferred to a federal prosecutor named Harlan Briggs. She met his eyes. That's why I kept all of it. Not just to clear your name, but to burn theirs down. For the first time in 7 years, Gabby Anthony smiled. It was not a warm smile. It was thin and precise, and it held the quality of a door being unlocked after a very long time. 7 years. One woman. One box. One truth. Vincent Morrow got the call at 11 p.m. He was in the study of the Westchester estate, Gabby's old study, redecorated with the enthusiasm of a man trying to convince himself he belonged there. He walked out this morning. 7 years. Time served. We lost him at Port Authority. Vincent set down his glass. Find him. And when you do, don't call me first. You understand what I'm telling you. He sat in the dark and did the arithmetic he should have done 7 years ago. The evidence had been destroyed. The lawyers were paid. The DA's office had been managed. But Gabby Anthony had always operated on instinct before information. And Vincent knew, with the cold certainty of a man who had looked his boss in the eyes and watched those eyes absorb the blow without breaking, that instinct alone might be enough. By midnight, 4 men were in a black SUV on the FDR Drive moving north toward the Bronx, heading for 431 Mercer Street. 7 years in a building where survival meant reading sound. That skill doesn't leave a man just because the walls do. The sound of a vehicle moving too slowly down a residential street at 12:30 in the morning registered in Gabby's nervous system before his conscious mind caught up. He moved to Chloe's window without turning on a light. Below, a black SUV at the corner. Lights off. Get the box. Chloe was already moving. She had been watching his face, and she had learned to read him through prison glass. Fire escape. Kitchen window. Leads to the alley. Building on the other side. Laundry facility. Side door is usually unlocked after 10. The night manager props it. He looked at her. You checked this. I check everything, she said simply. They moved through the dark apartment and out onto the fire escape. 4 flights down. Fast and silent. They were on the second landing when voices carried through the building shaft from above. More than one. Speaking low. Gabby pressed Chloe flat against the wall, body between her and the sound. She held the box to her chest and breathed. He counted to 4. Then they moved, fast, 2 flights to the alley floor in less than 30 seconds. The laundry facility door was propped exactly as she had said. They slipped into the hot, detergent-scented dark and crossed to the back exit onto a parallel street. They walked, not ran. Running draws memory. 4 blocks north. A bodega. A prepaid phone. Chloe's emergency cash. He called Patricia Odom at 12:47 in the morning. This is Gabby Anthony. We have the evidence. We also have a problem moving faster than anticipated. I have a contact at the FBI, Odom said, her voice crisp and awake. He's been building a case against Vincent Morrow for 2 years. He's been missing the centerpiece. Set the meeting, Gabby said. Tonight. The meeting with Agent Carver lasted 4 hours. By the third USB drive, he had stopped taking notes. By the time the manila envelope was open, he had made 2 calls and a federal judge had been woken in her home in Riverdale. The warrants were signed before sunrise. But Gabby had asked for one thing in return. One conversation. Before the arrests. Monitored and recorded. One chance to stand in a room with the people who had taken 7 years of his life and let them understand, fully, completely, that he knew everything. Natalie was brought in first. She saw him and went perfectly still. Gabby, she started. I have the transcripts. Every message between you and Vincent, going back 14 months before my arrest. I have the security footage. I have the original recordings, the complete ones, not the versions you helped edit. And I have the communication between you, Vincent, and a federal prosecutor named Harlan Briggs. Her face went the color of old paper. You are going to spend a very long time thinking about the day you decided a signature on a divorce form was an acceptable ending to what you did to me. He stood up before she could respond. I'm not doing this for revenge. I'm doing this because it's the truth. And the truth was never yours to bury. When they brought Vincent in 30 minutes later, Gabby said nothing at all. He simply looked at him across the table, those dark eyes that the years had made neither softer nor colder, only clearer, and let the silence say everything that needed saying. Vincent tried to hold the look. He lasted 4 seconds. By 9 a.m., both of them were in federal custody. By noon, the prosecutor who had managed Gabby's case had retained an attorney of his own. That evening, Gabby watched his name scroll across the bottom of a news screen. Wrongful conviction case opens federal investigation. He felt something drain out of him he hadn't known he was still carrying. Not triumph. Not satisfaction. Just the profound, exhausting relief of a truth that had been underground for 7 years finally breaking the surface and breathing. 6 months later, on a Tuesday morning in April, Gabby Anthony stood on the sidewalk outside a building on West 57th Street and looked up at the sign above the door. Anthony and Watkins Consulting LLC. Not an empire. Not a penthouse. Not a 12-acre estate. A single suite of offices on the 4th floor. 4 employees. 2 conference rooms. A coffee machine Chloe had insisted on. By every metric of his former life, small. By every metric of the life he intended to build, exactly right. Chloe had suggested the consulting firm. She had arrived at the suggestion having already researched the market, drafted a preliminary business plan, and identified 2 potential anchor clients. She laid the documents on the table, the same table where she had once laid out 7 years of buried evidence, and looked at him with those steady eyes. You know how things work. How power moves. How people make decisions when they think no one is watching. That's valuable. It doesn't have to be used the old way. He had looked at her for a long moment. You want to build something. I want to build something honest. With you. The old walls had risen, bitterness, distrust, the ironclad refusal to let anyone fully in. But he had looked at her face and remembered every Thursday. Every 2-hour drive. Every brown package pressed through bars. Every moment she had stood in the gap between him and total erasure and simply refused to leave. Okay, he said. Just that. The door behind him opened and Chloe stepped out, 2 coffees in hand, her afro catching the morning light. She held one out without speaking. He took it. They stood side by side on the sidewalk, looking at the sign with their names on it. You nervous? She asked. No. Liar. And Gabby Anthony, former syndicate boss, 7-year prisoner, Man who had been buried alive by the people he trusted most and had climbed back out through sheer refusal, laughed. Low. Unpracticed. A little rough around the edges. Like a door that hadn't been opened in years. Chloe smiled beside him. They went inside. Not as it was. Better. If you've ever trusted someone completely, and watched them walk away the moment it cost them something, this story was made for you. Hit subscribe and turn on your notifications. Because the next story, the betrayal cuts even deeper. And the person who stayed carried a secret heavier than anything you've seen here. You do not want to miss it. Comment below where you're watching from. I want to know how far this story has traveled. Stay close. It only gets better from here.